Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the How to Film Weddings podcast. My name is John and I've got a really awesome episode for you today. We are interviewing Sara and Yaz, both from Wedditor. They've been my editing company, outsourcing company since 2019, and we've gone through quite a journey, changing from Redeemed Productions, doing upper mid-level market weddings to John Bunn Films and moving into a luxury brand, but not just like your typical luxury brand, more luxury nostalgic or working with brides still, not mainly planners. And we just kind of walk through everything that's happened in the last 3 or 4 years to go from from Redeemed Productions to John Bunn Films and charging $8,000 to $10,000 to upwards of $20,000 plus, and like what it has taken as a collaborative team. We go deep on this episode. I'm not going to lie. This is not an ad kind of episode for Wedditor or anything like that. Actually, it's quite the opposite. It's more just, it's like talking through the process for the last 4 years of John Bunn Films becoming what it is. And I know a lot of you know my story, but today we dig into it a little bit more. So without further ado, let's hop into this week's episode with Wedditor. Okay, well, welcome from Wedditor, Yaz, my editor, as well as Sara, Judd, our main project manager, liaison, buddies of mine. They feel like part of my team. Welcome back to the show. Yaz, have you been on the show before?
No, this is my first time.
Oh my goodness. So this is here. Yeah, this is groundbreaking. My editor for the last, since 2019, and then Sara, Judd, part of the Wedditor team here today. And we've got a fun episode planned, but we're going to kind of flip the script a little bit. Sara is going to throw some questions my way, throw some questions Yaz's way, just about what the journey of John Bunn Films from Redeemed Productions has been. And it's been quite a 4-year period of time, a little over 4 years. And there's a lot that's gone on behind the scenes. So we thought it'd be great to kind of talk about going from the mid-market into, an entry luxury level for me, into luxury weddings and what all that has taken creatively. So without further ado, welcome Sara and Yaz. Sara, how are you guys doing today?
We're doing awesome, and I'm really excited to be here to be talking about this. I feel like over the past really year, there's been such a veil over the luxury market that's been lifted. I feel like filmmakers are willing to talk about what it takes to be in that market more. And then also vendors and planners are willing to come forward and kind of talk about what it takes to get your brand there. And as that's been happening, we have a lot of our own filmmakers that are looking to also make that jump from mid-market and up. And so we've been fortunate and very flattered to receive a lot of our clients actually referencing John Bunn Films as an inspiration as they go up. So obviously a very high compliment to all of us sitting here. But the transition from Redeemed Productions to John Bunn's wasn't necessarily the smoothest. So I thought it'd be great just to kind of have a transparent talk about what goes into production when you make that jump, as well as what goes into post-production in response to that change in production. Yeah. Really what inspired this too was when we had done the film Maggie and Scott for John, that was at a venue. It was at Southern Hills Country Club in Tulsa. Mm-hmm. We had edited dozens of mid-market level weddings there before Yas had done those. And then when I saw kind of this whole production of Maggie and Scott come together in the final film and the teaser, is just like, man, I think I speak for this team when I say, like, if we had been given the opportunity to, film and edit a wedding like that a couple years ago, I don't think it would have come out anywhere near as well put together and big as it did. So it was kind of cool to see that come full circle. So that's kind of what inspired this. So
yeah, and it's been really fun from my perspective, like running How to Film Weddings and like being around all of these people and growing so fast. Like I've grown so much since starting How to Film Weddings, where when I started, I was shooting in auto white balance and didn't know the difference between 8-bit and 10-bit, color or different things like that, or just like incorporating sound or like really getting stingy with the kinds of shots that I wanted to do or the kinds of clients I wanted to work with. And yeah, I had been at Southern Hills Country Club, which is a very bougie place here in Tulsa, multiple times doing very entry-level luxury kind of weddings. And that was where I was capping out with Redeemed Productions and just didn't have the time or ability with so many weddings booked to take it to that next level. And then when I had the opportunity to film Maggie and Scott's wedding, this was a 7-figure budget wedding. They brought in a custom, like a 10,000 square foot tent with a custom printed floor that matched the invitations, and the decor was ridiculous. They had a welcome party the night before with a band, and spent several $100,000 on it, and a welcome brunch that they spent a ton on. But it really just kind of like crossed all these things for me, where it was like they really cared about their wedding films. They were all very much in the luxury market. The design was there, the elegance, the beauty, all of it was there. And I could honestly say that I don't think that if it was 2019 when I got that, I would have even trusted Wedditor with that edit, right? I would have just been like, I'm going to do this one on my own. Like this is, and so to see that journey, a lot of people are like, they don't see that journey behind the scenes and how many hard conversations we've had to have and how much I've burned you guys out in certain areas, or like tried, it's like 100 changes here, and I'm sure like there's been this like friction always. And I think it's been really good to help us all grow, but it's going to be fun to kind of unpack the last few years and that journey from, at that point I was charging maybe 8 or 10 grand for wedding films, and now it's double, and so, yeah.
I love that. And so jumping back in time a little bit, I would say with Redeem Productions, by the end of, or what became the end of Redeem Productions, I would say that you had a pretty enviable business going. You'd wake up on a Saturday, you'd drive across town, you'd go to these venues that you were very familiar with. Like you knew where bride prep was going to be. You knew where you were going to do portraits. You probably knew a lot of the vendors there already. So you go from like comfortably booking like 20 weddings a year in places, to deciding all of a sudden, I'm going to pack my bags, fly across the country or fly to a different country, get off a plane, and then literally hit the ground running, just recording events all weekend long. So for you, like what was the catalyst that made you want to take a step in that direction?
Yeah. So it started with Italy for me. One of the couples I had filmed their wedding at Southern Hills, their sister was getting married, and I just saw she posted on Instagram, like, we're getting married in Positano. And I was just like, oh my goodness. So I reached out to her and I was like, hey, I don't know if you're interested, but I would literally film that wedding for free. I would do like if you could just get me there. They ended up paying me more, but like I booked the wedding, and there was just something about like the excitement of being in a new place, being with a family or an event that's going to take place over multiple days, just the depth that you could get with them. And I just remember leaving that wedding weekend, although it was honestly hell trying to get up and down mountains. I had no idea how to travel. I should have been in backpacks. I was in rolling carts. I'm just carrying stuff. It was very difficult. My bags got delayed 3 days, so I wore the same undies, for a few days in a row. Had to find some Italian underwear, which those are much smaller, just if you were wondering. It was just like stressful. I'm chafing. My armpits stink. I'm trying to find deodorant. It's just like all these different things. Yeah. But it's like when we got there, it was like they were so excited that I had made the trip, and there was only 20 people. And the first day we got on a yacht and went to Capri and did like these tours of the Blue Grotto, and like just jumping off of cliffs and handing them a GoPro and getting all this footage and swimming in the sea and just being with them. And then a rehearsal, a welcome night, rehearsal dinner, the wedding on the side of a cliff, like all these things. But it was with people that like, oh my goodness, they just loved family. And it just was so that's where I did that wedding, and I got back and was like, I think I've been ruined. That was actually the last wedding that I edited solo. That was right whenever I was finding you guys. You had done a couple for me, and I was like, I'm taking the Italy one. And you guys were like, oh, please let us edit it or whatever. And I was like, I want to, but I don't trust you yet. I'm sorry. I do, but I don't. I just wanted it because I was there. And so I made that one. And like a lot of people talk about, oh, don't do stuff for free or cheap or whatever. I think I made like $5,000. It was definitely not worth it. But that one wedding, I can point back to. That's what ended up getting me, someone interested in me coming to Cabo. And then her sister actually got married in Cabo. And so they had me out there, and Guatemala, and like back to Mexico this year. And Charleston one came up. It was a really big one. And a lot of like Colorado and just different ones just started reaching out. And I started really leaning into experiences over multi-day, because I realized that was what invigorated me after 15 years. I didn't get bored, but it was just like, I need a challenge. I need something different. I need to see a different place. And I really at that point started learning that if I could lean into what I really would want to film, no matter what, no matter how much I got paid or whatever, and create films that were no longer vanilla or no longer just beautiful, but like an experience to watch them, that was like the beginning of that transformation for me.
I love that. That's so exciting. I didn't know all that about Italy. That was super cool. And then
small underwear.
I didn't know about the underwear either.
You're picturing me right now in Italian underwear, aren't you?
Thank you so much, John.
I'm just going to remember that when I go to Italy now, right? Okay. Underwear.
When we
Different.
talk about like doing these multi-day weddings, because most of the weddings that we're editing and you're filming, you are going for the whole weekend. So how did your production have to change? What things did you change in your production approach to go from the single day to the full weekend?
Yeah. On a production side of things, I think I just realized like if I want to do this right, I need a second shooter, first of all, that is, my wife Heather's not my second shooter. I'd always have a random person. I filmed Italy solo and brought in a guy, that's awesome from Italy to help fly the drone. But I was just like, I need like my go-to second shooter that could also be a lead shooter. And that's where I started bringing in Blake, the editor. And at that time I had switched, Italy was one of my final weddings on Canon before switching to Sony the next year. And like Blake knew Sony really well. And like, I really hired him for the first time just because I was nervous to shoot Sony by myself in case something went wrong. I knew he'd be there. But like we just started getting really intentional about leaving a lot of lenses at home that we didn't need. I moved from all primes to a few zooms in a prime or two, but like most of the time I'm on a 24-70 instead of, or 70-200. The gimbal stayed home a lot more, like a lot of that on the travel, but production wise, it became a lot more pre-production, figuring out, let's get outside of the box creatively and throw ideas at these couples. Like, what if you guys rented a boat in Charleston? That was my idea. And they were like, let's do it. And then I get this killer footage from on a boat at sunset on the East Coast. And it was just gorgeous. And I was like, hey, we're going to be going out anyway. You're going to be dressed up. Let's do a little photo shoot for 30 minutes before we get on the boat. And it's like, I just started throwing ideas. And I think Charleston was really one of the first ones that like Blake was on it with me. We shot Canon on that one, but like where we kind of just really gelled and was like, oh my gosh, Blake looks at this as his baby as well, and he's all in. And it was just like, I can trust him to like, you go fly the drone and get all the groom stuff while I nail it over here with all these things. And in the middle of all that, I was going through a transformation of like really digging into my own education of understanding how to shoot better, how to color grade better, how to like, and kind of getting really stingy with the kinds of shots I would take or that sort of thing. So production changed a ton because I just was like, hey, offering all these suggestions, bringing in another shooter, and like really gaining a lot of knowledge when it came to how to get the most out of my gear. And to me, it has always been led by like, I'm very nostalgic, I'm very family driven. And so it's like, I want to be part of these weddings where it's not just about this weekend, even it's about 2 full lifetimes getting people to this weekend. And that's kind of the lens that when I'm talking to people, it's like, that's why they want to book me. And the more I leaned into that, the more people have booked me for that, and how much easier it's gotten for my 2024 weddings to be like, just tell me that you're available on this date. We're ready to pay our deposit. Because I spent years being like, I'm only doing this next level stuff. And it just changed. It was, it reminded me of, I was like, I want to be a $20,000 filmmaker. And so I just switched that in my mind. The prices were still 10 to 14 or so. But like in my mind, what do people with 20K budgets pay for? What a 25K budget, like what is that? And that's where it's like, I'm going to be there for 3 days. I don't care if you pay me extra. They did pay me extra. But like once you have that in your portfolio, you can then say, yeah, this couple in Charleston, that was a $25,000 package, although they only paid me 14, but that's what it should have, And so it's kind of been this beautiful upcycling every year of less and less people questioning the prices and things like that.
Sometimes I'd seen on your schedule too that there's a third shooter. Now, is that mostly a drone, or like when do you decide when it's time to bring in a third, or just leave it with you and Blake?
Yeah, the wedding we referenced earlier, Blake was actually shooting in Cabo that day for me, and he was with another guy that we work with in Cabo. And so I had double booked myself. I was supposed to be on the Cabo wedding, and then the biggest planner in town was like, "My daughter's getting married. Can you film it?" And I was like, "Oh no, I'm in Cabo," and I made it work, figured it out. But like that wedding, the 7-figure wedding, I just knew looking at the production. We went to a meeting a month before, and they handed me a book that was like the plan for the weekend, and I was just like, this welcome party needs 2 shooters, maybe 3 people. This brunch needs 2. And I kind of got out of the way of myself limiting. Like, I started to look at things in a way, it was like, if there were no budget, if there were no rules, what would I do to be so creative and have the most fun doing this and give them something that it's not replicatable? Nobody else could provide this. And so when I would just look at, I would not be afraid to speak up when I felt like there should be more people and stuff. So a lot of times a third shooter would come along whenever I'm looking at a timeline. On Maggie and Scott's wedding specifically, it was like they were getting married at her childhood home, which is like this beautiful mansion 35 minutes away from the country club. And during the ceremony is the only time that I was going to be able to capture details with the drone inside of the tent, flying above the tables without being a weirdo or getting all that. Like, it's all ready for like 15 minutes with nobody in it. And that's the one time. And instead of being like, you need to move that, I realized I need 2 shooters at this ceremony and I need to be over. And like, there was just so many moving parts and so much going on that it was like, I don't want to risk it. I'll pay an extra $1,000 to have someone there for 5-6 hours. And what I did was, like, the ceremony got going. And I don't know if you saw this, but like, I'm filming the bride come down the aisle, and then I just film her go down the aisle. She gets set, and then I just turn and walk to my car, and I go get in my car. And like, I was able to make sure everything was set for the ceremony, and then literally went 100 miles an hour, not maybe that fast, but over to the venue with my gimbal in my hand while I'm driving, and like buckled into my seatbelt or whatever next to me, and just like immediately get out and start recording gimbal shots of the tent and stuff. And like, if I wouldn't have gotten there, I mean, if I got there 10 minutes later, I wouldn't have been able to get any of that. And so to me, it's important. That part was important because I know how important the details were to this planner to get lots of vertical shots and horizontal and drone shots and 7200 compressed shots and wide shots and whatever. And so it just gave me the ability to like really go over the top, and I trusted the ceremony was going to be good. And then it just got me, I threw up my drone around the tent real fast, like all this stuff. It just made it. And so adding the third shooter for me, honestly, when I realized this is going to be way too stressful on us, this is my 17th year doing it. And so I just know I'm not going to be able to run from up here down to the beach and back up and whatever and move gear, and like this transition between ceremony and then having those extra set of hands. It's like, well, now what can we do? Oh, we can get a really crazy angle of the ceremony, like I did in Puerto Vallarta. Just I walked around and got different angles of the ceremony that we wouldn't have usually gotten, and so then it just slowly giving me a little bit more of like, look what we can do whenever we bring that team. So it's usually out of pocket of my own, but it's like, I know the day is going to be better and the film's going to be better. So,
and I love that, because I know, most filmmakers, I mean, it's their business, they're small business owners. It might be their only job. And so there is a very profit first kind of mentality, because you kind of have to be, especially when you're, if this is your only job, you have to be careful about your bottom line. But what you're saying, and like being able to take care of the couples that way, and also give yourself that footage, like those films and those clips you're talking about, especially with Maggie and Scott's wedding, like those made a big difference in the final production. So eating a little bit of cost to give yourself that footage and give that to us to work with was, I mean, it made a huge difference. So it's nice to hear you talking about taking care of the couple and looking out for them in ways like that they probably wouldn't realize or would even know was going on behind the scenes, but you're just doing and just, again, providing that service to them. That's awesome. And along the lines of that, so we're talking a lot about shooting, to talk slightly about editing, 'cause obviously you've seen the films we put together for you now. Was there anything that surprised you when it came to kind of seeing what we put together versus how it felt or kind of looked to you through camera while you were shooting?
I mean, at the point that we had really upped the John Bunn Films brand, we were maybe 40 edits in with you guys or something, so like, I think that it's like, we just kept turning the heat up of like, we can make this, like, I would see an edit that I couldn't have produced on my own, but because I didn't use that mental space to get the edit to where it was, I could then get into it and be like, what'd be cool is if we did this or add that or whatever. And so it like started taking those edits to the next level. And then once we had multiple conversations just about like where John Bunn Films was heading, the new website went up, all this different stuff. It was like, I think there was just kind of an understanding where like, hey, I'm going to have to step up my game if I'm going to be continuing to raise these prices and in doing these weddings. And so getting them back, like, I think about Guatemala, getting version 1 back and just being so blown away. I think about getting Maggie and Scott's version 1 back and just being like, it is kind of amazing because I couldn't put that together on my own. Like, I couldn't edit. I would have so many changes for version 1 if I put it together. And so it's freed me up to be the director. And I've talked about this in different podcasts and stuff, but like, I have on my website like cinematographer and creative director. I'm looking at Wedditor as like, you guys are in the next room and you're the team that's like part of the staff of John Bunn Films, and you're putting things together and you're trying to like anticipate what it is that I would want, or trying to be like, woo, we could try this. And like, you find some of the things that like really scratch that itch for me creatively. And I'm just like, heck yes. And I just can't help myself from being like motivated and excited by that. And then saying, what if we take this to a new level by doing this? And it's kind of like this good, it always, I was saying this, I think, to Nick the other day, it's like, it always feels like a struggle, like from version 1 till the final, where it's like, well, this is why we did this. And it's like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, cool. Well, we don't have to change that. And it's like, but what if we did this? And it's just like this struggle. And it kind of feels like a little exhausting, but like by the time we get it to where it needs to be, it's so much better than you all could have done on your own, so much better than I could have done on my own. And so I'm always just very impressed, and it's like so proud to put out what it is that we come up with, knowing that I don't have a business partner that can be looking at different aspects and saying, hey, I think we need to soften it up over here, or hey, it's too fast paced or too what, and so like that push and pull is that friction that's needed to produce the kinds of films that I feel like now, like you're saying, people are saying, I want my film to look more like a John Bunn film or whatever. And that wouldn't have happened just by me sitting in an editing cave by myself.
I love it. So wholesome. I love this. Talking a little bit about fiction, I think one of the things that caught us a little off guard when we started with the first couple, like dedicated John Bunn films, like these were couples you booked that were going to for sure be in this brand. You changed cameras on us once or twice. And then we also seemed to always have different LUTs that we were going for. And Yasmine, I talked about this with you earlier this week. You had like the perfect analogy for this.
Like, the worst analogy, but she loved it, so we're going to use it. I kind of feel like a relationship between a filmmaker and an editor is kind of like, the cake dangling in front of the treadmill analogy. Mm-hmm. That's how the best way I described it to someone the other day. I was like, so you're the cake, John. You're dangling there, and I'm the person running, and I'm like, okay, so I need to get in his head. I need to be exactly how he thinks. How is he going to do this? And then you evolve and you grow. And I think that's something we're quite similar in, is we both want to get better. We want to be better. And I see it from the beginning in your notes, because you hype me right up. I see it like, oh, this would be great. Oh, this would be creative. I'm like, yeah, it's going to be the best film ever. But we're both trying to get better. We're both trying to get better. And I think that's why it can be quite difficult. Because like I said, I need to be in your head. I need to know how you're going to address different situations, because it's art at the end of the day, and it's subjective, and something might work for one person, but something might work for someone else. And I have to get in your head. But as you grow and you change, I also need to follow you. And that can be a challenge, but it also can be exciting. And I think going back to what you said earlier about how there's layers to editing, and there's layers to the films that we've created together. And it's been us together side by side, exactly like you said, in another editing room. I literally love this job when we're together and what can we produce for the couples? Like, what can we make that's going to make them feel they can look back on this, and it's just, it's something that's really special to them. And I don't see it as you're on the other end, I need to drag and drop you a film. I see it as, how can we make this great together? And exactly like you said, like I go, I did it like this. What do you think? And you're like, oh, if we add it like this, it'll be so cool. And then we bounce. And it's how I think we both get passionate and excited about it, because we know we can make something great from bouncing ideas. Sara as well. Sara reviews my films. I would never send a film off to someone if someone hadn't checked it over, because I've been sat there for hours seeing it in one way. She might see it completely differently. And all these people together, I feel, will give that couple the best film. And that's exactly what we want. We want them to treasure it.
100%. I think like the bouncing back and forth can slow things down in post-production, because when you're trying to kind of establish what it is that this new brand looks like to you, what you want it to sound like, what you want it to look like, there's a lot of little checkpoints. And if you know John, most of you probably don't know Yas, but these two, if I locked them in a room and I said, like, make a decision about what you want this film to look like and where you want it to go, there would never be a film. John is always so not wanting to step on Yaz's toes. He doesn't want to get in her way if she has like an idea that she's really like empowered by and like wants to do. And Yas is the same way. Yas doesn't want to take something that maybe John wanted to try to do that maybe she's not 100% feeling, but then push back against. So sometimes just getting things going is a little bit slower than when you have such an established formula. And I don't say formula in a negative way, but when you're doing, you know, weddings in lower market and you have like one day of footage to work with, that production can get a little bit more in a certain structure. So I would say be aware that when you are starting to make that change, especially in post-production, like anticipate things being slower, maybe work that into your turnarounds. Just be aware that can happen, because you're trying to explore. You don't want to have the pressure of a really harsh deadline on yourself to be creative and completely rewrite the script on what you're doing in a short amount of time. Yas, I wanted to ask you about just the approach. So you edited all Redeemed films when they were sent to Wedditor. What stayed the same in your approach from culling for Redeemed to John Bunn Films, or what changed?
I'd say essentially my process was the same. I am, I guess, an over color. Like, I like to have everything in my timeline, because if someone turns around to me and says, right, I want that picture of that shoe where I move left to right, I'm gonna be right, I don't have to go through the footage, I know exactly where that is. I've got everything there. But I think what I have noticed is moving in more into the luxury market, I feel like there is less time with the couples. And so I am really trying to find these extra moments so it doesn't look like we're showing the same portraits. And I think something I've grown to love finding is not just when someone goes in for a kiss, but the way they pull away from a kiss. Obviously, sometimes that can be not too flattering, so you gotta be careful. But like the smile, you know, the smile that they're just so happy. And they just, as they step away, you almost have that giggly kind of childlike, oh, I'm in love kind of look. And I love those looks. They make my heart melt. And I can use that kiss going into the kiss and also that smile after. It's like two different moments. And I think like stuff like that can allow you to extend the footage you have, because obviously it's in these bigger weddings, they have a lot going on and you want to utilize what you have. And I think that can be quite useful to just look for those tiny moments, look at the way people react. And I often find that those candid moments are almost better, you know, than the posed ones, because those are those genuine people. And I also feel like that's the difference between video and, you know, photography. If everyone poses for a photo, they're like, oh, they're rigid. But if you're looking in videography and you just look at a distance, you can really see how people are and what the actual characters are. And I really finding those little moments really showcase individual people and their personalities.
And I love that you mentioned location, because that was actually a note I remember John giving us very clearly when we started with the first Cabo film and then also moving into Charleston, was like, we had one way for Redeem that we were doing openers. And a lot of times those openers, like the film always opened on those really beautiful sunset portraits. And then it moved into the start of the day. And in that sense, like after a certain while, when you've done that dozens of times, it almost kind of feels like the wedding could be interchangeable. Like the couple story might be a little different, but the film itself is going to kind of feel like the same thing, only a slightly different way every time. When we started emphasizing location and really building up that location, like that changed the whole way that those openers went, and which was really interesting. I mean, John told us, he was like, most of these weddings are happening somewhere for a reason. The couples are choosing it there for a reason. So lean into that and make, what did you say? You said, make location a character in the story. Don't just ignore it. Don't just steamroll that to get into other parts. Like make sure that that's a healthy part of the edit.
Mm-hmm. I think that's definitely key, because I think going back to how we're all working together for these edits, that's how I grew as an editor, working on that project. oh yeah, location is a character. This might be, something important to people. Like I think in the Guatemala edit, it was something they wanted a venture, a destination, and the adventure that's part of their character, as in location as part of their character. So it kind of symbolized who they were. And I think in some of the edits, like Jenna and Noah, that place meant so much to that bride and that family. And that is another character. And, people, they're multidimensional. They're not just one thing. And I think having these different layers and different aspects to a film really goes, oh, he really thought about that part of my personality in my life. And then you switch to something else. And I really do. That's definitely how, like, working with you, John, honestly, that's one of the reasons I've grown, is because I thought I never thought about that. And I think working with loads of different people, that's how you're going to grow, and how all of these come together. Like you said at the beginning, the layers of everything, it's all come together now.
Yeah, I think as the brand has grown, as we've gotten more comfortable in what John Bunn Films actually looks like, I think the thing that's really stood out to me, and I think, again, this is probably reflected in the structure of the edits themselves, but these films are really about encompassing a weekend in time, not just a single day, and also a family through time, and not just on a single day. Like, there's such an element of like heritage, and really, when we're looking at story, Yasmine, when you send me those skeletons and you send them to John, like, we're looking at how this couple got to that point from even long ago. There is such a focus on family and coming together. And I think that's such a key difference. And again, being able to be here the whole weekend, like John was saying, about like being able to get to know the family, and then Yaz, you getting to have all that footage, and you also getting to know that family. Like, it's really shaped the films into something completely different. Even if it's the same location as we've done before, it's a totally different beast. But I did want to talk to you about that, Yaz, because we'll talk about Guatemala. So that was a massive, massive project. And also the one that you were very candid with me about, is saying, like, I am burning out. I want you to talk a little bit about why, because there were assumptions as to why I thought you were burning out. I thought maybe it's just the massive scale of this and how much footage, and like, it's a really big deal. But then what you told me as to why actually surprised me a bit.
Oh, okay. Well, to be honest, there was a lot of home video for this project, and I actually started by culling through the home video. So I just went through all of it, and that means I went through these people's entire lives, and then I saw them as adults, and I almost felt like a massive connection to these people. And I really, like I said earlier, like, weddings are about loads of different things. It's not just about these two people. Like you said, it's their lives from how young they were. It's the people, and it's the people that's in those films that means something to them. And there was so many emotional speeches in this film. And so, like I said, looking at all those home videos, and I just honestly felt like I was in this family, essentially. And I'm a massive emotional person as well, so when I'm hearing all of these things, I'm like, oh my god. But yeah, it felt like my baby by the end of it. Honestly, I'd spent so much time like going through it, and some of the songs, just, when you've just heard that song and you're like, boom, like the one that's like tears, and it's about the, and I include it where the grandfather had passed away, and I was in tears watching it because I was just getting so into it. And I think that sometimes can like be a problem, because as editors, you get full on invested into these stories, and you can just see it, how it's going, and you've got to work with someone else because it is, their brand. And I think some of the other things that I did burn out on is creativity, because obviously, John, as you were developing your brand, we were trying to push those limits. What can we do? What can we do? And I think I always wanted it to be a John Bunn film. I want it to be a John Bunn film. I don't want it to be someone else's film. I want John to have uniqueness in his brand. And I think when you put all this creativity into a project and these different effects, and you're spending hours on them, and then they don't work, and you're like, I've just spent hours on this, and now it doesn't even work. So I think those sort of things is you don't know exactly where to push and how many hours it's going to take. And I think, like I said, it felt like my baby when I handed it over, and I know it's like a collaboration of everybody, but I was like, I know these people, I know what they're sad about, I know what the toys they play with when they're younger, and I think you really get invested in these people's lives.
I love that. And I think that's been there has been more conversation as we get further in the year and people are filming more and they're getting backlogs and they talk about outsourcing. There's been like a common thing that I keep hearing from people that had negative experiences outsourcing that say like, well, editors they don't care. And I think that's such a misconception. I'm sure it's true of some editors, just the way it's also true of some filmmakers. But there are editors, really good editors, that as much as filmmakers often feel like they leave either a small part or a very large part of them in their films when they give these to the couples, the right editors and good editors like Yaz also leave a part of themselves in these films as well. And that wasn't just on Guatemala. Yaz, there are a couple other edits that you worked on for John where like you had such a connection to certain parts in the story that I think was really interesting. Can you talk about a couple of those storylines?
Yeah, so I like, as both you are aware, my fiance was diagnosed with breast cancer in spring. And I noticed when I go into some of these edits, I've noticed when I was editing around that time that there is actually themes in there that are related to that. And I noticed in one of them with Maggie and Scott, you'll see there's bits about home. And at this point, before my fiance got her diagnosis, we were about to buy our first home, like so excited. And I noticed that in that moment, the home when we had to pull out of it, the home doesn't matter. All that matters is she's okay. Like that's all that matters. And I could see in that film, the home thing that I cut all the way through was because home starts as one thing and you think it's one thing. And as you get into this relationship and towards the end, it's like home just is where the people you love that are. That's literally it. Like you could be outside having a meal with your friends and know like that's all that matters when you really break things down. And then also there's another one we did, which was it said define yourself through this journey in it. And that's exactly what's helped me. And in that moment, I was like, you know what, we can smash this, like allow this to define yourself. Don't let this moment in your life crush you, lift it, bring more people happiness, do more things, make it show who you are through it. And I think, yeah, in these edits, I realized that I'd basically put myself in the edit, essentially.
Yeah, it shows. I think the other part that helps a lot with storyline, and Yaz, you and I have talked about this too, is obviously like there's going to be one or two speeches where they give you those lines and they're so good and you can lean into it. But when you have, you know, rehearsal speeches where usually it's lots of people going up to the mic and being very candid and personable and very real and giving information about the couple and so many opportunities for different storylines. I love that you're bringing it and trying to hone down on one kind of sentiment, one theme, and then you have lots of different things you can pull from speeches to help support that. Mm-hmm. Rather than trying to like, you know, really dig deep for a story where maybe a wedding day where maybe like 2 or 3 people gave toast, like that's really difficult. So what I've come to love through working on these big weekend weddings is that there are so many opportunities to really kind of tell the story that you actually want to tell versus feeling like you have to do something kind of safe. There's mm-hmm. so much more material. So when I've had clients ask me about how to start going up, I said, you should look into filming the rehearsal dinner for free, just a couple or very low cost basis, just to be able to get more potential storylines in your edits to make them something more custom and stand out a little bit. So yeah, that's,
I think sorry to cut you off. I think what I love about editing this year, and I'm trying to pull more into it, is like, obviously the film should be about the couple, 100% about the couple. They are the goal. But how many people are viewing these films? And I think there's so many good things in these films and people, what they say, and, you know, really impactful moments. And I feel like other people who can watch them can really take something from them. And I like to think there's a couple of those things I put in, like they would help someone else as well if they watched it. And I think you're almost honoring the couple by showcasing some of these powerful statements that their friends and family are saying, and like how empowering that can be for everybody.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah a lot because it's also true. When we talk about too, so I think there's something that was interesting when we started this journey together, and when John was initially telling us kind of like what he wanted the direction of this brand to go versus Redeemed. One thing that was always so key in Redeemed is I knew, John, when you were booking the weddings, you were booking usually through the couple and with the parents. And then when you started talking about luxury weddings, which are very oftentimes, almost most of the time, with a planner, I know you booked some through planners. When we had talked previously too, I was surprised that you're kind of back to booking through the couple more. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's very interesting, and it's not something that through working with other luxury filmmakers is too common.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, it gets me all emotional, excited hearing from Yaz, and like that's why the film, you know, like thinking through Guatemala and getting, the first version back and just absolutely loving it. And having, been in Guatemala for a week with that family, I just started like really feeling like, I don't know, like I had conversations with other luxury filmmakers about what they have to do to get into the luxury market. And after filming Guatemala, it kind of ruined me too, in a way, because it was like, this is the culmination of 15 years of work. And I don't care about the money. I don't care about I just want to put together like this story, this family, the fact that they gave me so much home footage and I was looking through it too. And just like, oh my gosh. And like so many hours of it and just boxes of, I spent 40 hours on the film before I even went to Guatemala. And like, so I'm seeing grandma, oh, that's what she looks like today in real. So I got to like experience that, but in real life. And I was like, that's what mom looks like now. Like I could tell who was who. And then I had taken some photos of footage just to send to the bride, just like, hey, this is you when you're 4. This is crazy. Who's that guy? And she's like, oh my goodness, that's my grandpa. I haven't seen him since he passed away or any footage. And I was like, oh my. And I just remember being with the family and connecting and like our faith, they're like, I connected with the mom and dad really well and was sitting with Mamu, the grandma, at the welcome party and just talking. And she was just talking about how much she wished her husband could have been there. And I was like, he's here. And she was explaining him. And I had recently taken the photo to send to Catherine, the bride, of home footage. And I was like, I think I have footage of him. And I was like, I pulled my phone up and said, is this your late husband? And she just melted, started crying. Like we hugged, she started crying. And she was like, he's here. Like here he is showing. And it was like this deep thing. It was just, wow. Like, oh my goodness. And I just remember being like so connected because mom was sitting right next to her mom and like, that's her dad. And it's just like we bonded. And like, there was just this trust where John was there to help tell this story and to honor. And anyway, I say all that to say is like that wrecked me in the fact that it's like, I don't know if I want to do weddings just for more money and more prettiness and more whatever. Like, is there a category of people that want to spend that much money but want to know their filmmaker? Like it just kind of was like, is that it? And then I worked with some more people like through a planner or whatever, or like started with the rebrand that we did. We really started aiming towards mothers and their daughters and like really talking to the mother of the bride. And so Telluride I booked and mom was very involved and like I got to know her really well and like she was gifting this to her daughter and I met the daughter and the bride and like got to know her, but like really got to know mom really well and was just like, I don't know if I want to, like, I'm going to be really nice to planners and I'm going to reach out to planners. And a lot of the big weddings I do, like they find me either through YouTube or another wedding or whatever, and they book me and that gets me in the same room with some of these Harper's Bazaar type wedding planners. And I'm making relationships with them and taking great care of them and doing everything I can to kind of like infiltrate the system and get in their, vendor list to get referrals. But in the meantime, all of my bookings have been through people, not through planners. And so I realized after talking to a few of my good friends in the luxury market, like I was talking to my wife after, I was just like, I don't know if I want to go to 5 different Engage events a year or want to do these, like, not that I don't want to network or go places, but it's like, I'm happy with where I'm at. Like, I would rather take even a pay cut to still do weddings like this in a way that only I could do. And what's happened because of that, and just really saying no to a lot of bigger bookings just because it was like they didn't want anything to do with me. It's just, I kind of made up my own category of the luxury nostalgic, that they care about the wedding film at the most, but they're also spending a ton of money on their wedding, and not just money, but a ton of time and resource to get people there or location. And so all of my bookings next year are not in Oklahoma, and they are $18,000+ weddings minimum, but video was like their number one thing. Like they're booking the date around my availability, and then they're booking their high-end planner, and then I'm already part of the team where the planner might have said, hey, use this person instead. And so I'm cool with it. I've gotten to a place to where whenever I was John Bunn Films, it was 39 weddings the first year I worked with you all that I had. And then it was 26, and then it was 16, and then it was 9, and then this year it's like 5. Or, and that's kind of also, I think, helped with the burnout where it's like, hey, this is great. Thank you guys for spending 12,000 hours on this, but I need you to make all these changes, and there's 4 other films. Like, where are those at? It's just like, what? And so, and in the middle of like, how Jim Gaffigan says it's like you're drowning and someone hands you a baby whenever you have like your 4th child. It's like that's what it felt like a lot of the time. So it was just like, I'm drowning. I'm growing how to film weddings. I've got all these weddings in the backlog. Brides are emailing me every day. So there's part of it that's like, just hurry up and get it done, but also make it the best thing ever. And it's really unfair of me. But in that craziness, it's like, oh, I didn't even realize I'm asking for all these things or what. And so now kind of having margin has really helped me to just be like much more intentional with those edits and stuff. But anyway, with the Guatemala specifically, I just remember thinking, I don't want to do weddings if we're not putting this much attention into, like, after she sent version 1, I watched it and I had an email saying, this is great, no changes. And I just waited for a day and I watched it like 20 more times in my car. And because I wanted to hear it with the sound system, and I watched it on my TV with my wife, and I watched it with Blake, and I watched it with Nick. And it's like, what do you guys think? How do you, and everybody was just like, it's unreal, but it feels like there's too much home footage in the film. And I was like, you know what? You're probably right. That's probably right. And then going back to you guys and saying, hey, is there any way to cut out like some of this home footage? And I know that like Yaz was just like, oh no, like don't do that to my film. And but it was just like, I just remember feeling bad about it. And then like, but watching version 1 to what I think was version 3 or 4 that we got to, and how the magic happened in the fact that it was like we were able to push and pull. And then as we're watching it, I'm like, man, the audio, like it's good, but like I really want to take that to the next level. Can you guys have your audio editor like go in and make it boom, make it, and then it was like, oh my goodness, this is so much better. And it felt more like an actual production, right? Where I was one of the cinematographers and I'm the director, and we've got the lead editor and project managers or DPs with you guys. And it's like, we brought it, we screened it, we went back, feedback, created something better, then finalized the audio and the color and got it to this level where it's still my favorite film that we've ever done. So
I love it. And I remember being so proud. We talk a lot about how it's the collaboration, and yes, it's the filmmaker, and ultimately like these are your children, these are your films. But also like if you want an editor to get invested almost the same level you are and to really give it their all, like it is like it's a joint custody situation almost. And I remember that was the first film that someone had actually directly credited Yaz as the editor. And that was a really awesome moment for us, because I really think that drove home. It's like, yes, there are many vendors that make a wedding possible. And yes, you are the filmmaker, and ultimately it is your responsibility and your job. But to also see the editor get a call out like that was really awesome. And I think something that as the industry grows, it might be a direction we kind of have to naturally move in, into being more accepting that a filmmaker can be a jack of all trades, but to really be their best and to do the things that they really enjoy, they're going to have to be open to working with the team. It can't just always be one person's brain, because otherwise that burnout just happens so quickly. And it's not fair to yourself. And I think it can make the job unenjoyable, and to really thrive. I think, again, just seeing that credit.
If I can add there too, there are people that it's like, that is like, I know some of the unicorns in the industry that are just like, can do all the things, but they have to do a lot to protect themselves and their mental health. Because like, I think about Catherine with Blink, who's one of my great friends in the industry. And we've had many conversations where she's like, I'm just not in a great place. I've been editing and I need time to almost heal emotionally and heal my soul from this. And her films are magic. And I love them. And, but if she doesn't take that really seriously to protect that, she won't continue doing it. There's no way but burnout in that. And I think a lot of us look to industry leaders, or we put people on the podcast where it's just like, they are, unique artists, and like you feel like you have to be that to be sustainable in your business and creative. I've never felt more creatively alive as a wedding filmmaker as I did with Guatemala, and I didn't touch a single button on the edit. And I think about like Chris Nolan, who's one of my favorite directors of all time. It's like he's not pushing the buttons. He's got the direction. And he might go into the editing bay and say, no, I want like this, I like this or whatever. But he's seeing version 1 or 2 or 3 of different scenes and saying, I love this, but like this direction or whatever. And I think that it's not only more sustainable, it's more fun to be building something collaboratively. And I remember getting done with that film and thinking, like, it's not even right to just say this is I did this. I wanted to credit Rodrigo for shooting. I wanted to create Blake for shooting. I wanted to create, what's the word I'm looking for? Credit. There it is. It's like went away. To credit all these people and to say, hey, this was the editing team. This was the cinematography team. This was the audio team. Because I'm thinking about actual films. It's like there's credits upon credits upon credits and these hundreds of people. And that's one thing we've been talking about a lot on the podcast. It's like, you don't have to be a one-man band to do this. And especially if that's not your cup of tea. Like I know Catherine, she loves doing the deep edits and stuff. And she set up parameters so that she doesn't drown herself. But a lot of us, 99% of us, that's not how our DNA is made up. And we would be more fulfilled and more happy having a Yaz on our team or, different editors, whether that's you hiring somebody in-house, an outsourcing company or someone to cull or whatever it is, but building that collaborative team around you is so much more fulfilling.
Yeah, I think I'm solely an editor. I have never shot a wedding ever. And I love editing. Like storytelling is the thing that I love. I'm not a massive fan of being the person that's behind the camera. I am so in love with telling people's stories, and I'm lucky to have done like quite a few. So I feel like I can bring that to the to edits, because I've had different scenarios where, the bride's entrance wasn't great. Okay, what can we do? Oh, we're lacking in this area. What can we do? And there's something actually like I've learned personally is that there's life currency and there's money currency. And if you can, obviously you don't want to get into debt or anything, but if you can afford to spend a little bit of money just to get a bit of your life, I think that is something that I've learned. Like, if you really want to go for a walk and spend that coffee and you can afford it, do it. If it brings you joy, do it. And I feel like when you look into life like that, you get more out of it because you're not always worrying about, I need to be doing everything. I need to be saving money everywhere, because the whole scheme of things is you enjoy your life and you have a great time. So that's something that's kind of like helped me, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, preach. Seriously. I mean, we talk about that all the time. And, it's not just about outsourcing so you can focus back on your business. It's about outsourcing so you can do whatever it is that you actually want to do with your time, whatever makes you happy. I've heard so much. It's almost gotten so emotional in here talking about Guatemala and all these deep things. But it seems like that's what John Bunn Films became about. I think when we started, for me, I thought this was going to be us trying to be really edgy and cool and like trying to be super modern with the films. And then as it's gone on, to me, they've turned back into some of the core essence of Redeemed, which is something sometimes mostly spiritual to a degree, but really about family, really about the idea of heritage. And so that surprised me. And I think now that we know that's how we've kind of gotten all of our confidence back. But I wanted to ask, I'll ask you that question first too. For you, what is this brand to you now versus when you started editing?
I think it's personal. You can, as we've taught, there's a lot of personal aspects in these edits, but it's how you can tailor these edits for these individual people. How like I said before, everybody's got loads of different aspects to their personality, to their lives, and it's about honing in on each of those and trying to showcase all those moments. And it's something, going back to what John said earlier about people that matter. Like even in these luxury weddings, the people matter. Like putting the people at the heart of the edit will give you great edits, because like everybody's great and has loads of different parts of their personalities and stories to tell and inspirational things that people have done in their lives, and putting them in these edits, I feel like they just make them so unique. And like I said, honor the couple and honor the family members. And that's, I get really, when I see all these people and hear what they have to say and their little mannerisms as well, like that's what gets me. Like when someone smiles a certain way, I'm like, oh, it's so cute. That person's so sweet. Even when someone the way they hold themselves, you can tell that they're quite a confident person. Like, okay, I want to lean into that. They're quite a confident person, or they're hilarious. Lean into that. Really highlight these people. Show how amazing they are to everybody. And I think, main thing for me is just how personal they are. And I really like the freedom of being able to showcase that.
John, same thing. I think when we started, I remember the set of notes we got for that very first Cabo wedding and kind of really what you were at that time really pushing forward to. I think now coming back off of another local luxury wedding, and also you had just returned we just did a Mexico wedding again. What does this brand mean to you now? And talk about that a little bit versus when we started.
Yeah. And I will try not to get emotional because when I started, my dad was still here, and he always ingrained in us just how important family is. And like you were saying earlier, Yas, where it was like family, home is where those people are, and we're coming up in a few weeks on his 3-year anniversary of passing. And like in the last 3 years, just feeling that torch passed to me and my brothers is kind of like, the leading adults in the family now, and like my dad's legacy and things that have been left behind. And one of my best friends after my dad died, I called him, and his mom had recently passed, and he's like, it's kind of like your favorite book and all like the best memories kind of just rise to the top. After they are gone, you kind of forget all the things that like their quirks that you didn't like or things and you just remember like the principles that they helped instill in you and like the things that mattered. And like, I think back now, I've got my kids, and like there's moments that very much remind me of things that are like coming to my mind of whenever I would, like my dad would discipline me when I was younger. It was always with a hug and a kiss and a prayer. And it was always never out of anger or never out of, trying to make me hurt, or it was none of that. It was like, he wanted my life to honor God. And that's like really stuck with me. And these good things have like come to the surface, and all the other stuff has just kind of gone away. And so thinking about where Redeemed Productions was just 3 years ago, into, right after that is whenever I was in the middle of the rebrand of John Bunn Films when my dad passed away, and I just had to pause it for like 8 months. Like I couldn't, and I echo a lot of what Yas is saying. But to me, the brand has become so much more personal and meaningful, and like the kinds of films, I was still trying to be attractive to a wider audience. And I've just gotten very comfortable and confident knowing God made me a certain way. And these are the kinds of films that really speak to my soul and invigorate me and get me excited. And every one of the couples now, it's just, I'm really trying my best to like lean into the legacy that maybe people that have already passed away, or the people that, it's, time is weird, and growing older is weird, and it's beautiful, and like so many beautiful, enjoyable moments, but it's always the tension of, life being beautiful because of the moments that are difficult. And thinking about, I thinking about just different milestones that like my dad's not going to be here for, or but also knowing that I'm standing on the shoulders of him and his parents, and it's like all this legacy is built. And I just want people to have like that that memento of, this is what our family is about. This is what's important in our family. Yeah, like we have money, that's great. That's just like a side note. Like it's not, I would much rather book a wedding where it's just the family is all in than, we're spending a lot of money. And so I just kind of had to get okay with the fact that it's like the American, we always have to be charging more and conquering more and taking more and growing more. It's like that thing that we do. I was just like, I don't care if I ever make more money than 10 or 12 grand. Like if these are the kinds of weddings that I want. And what's happened is I've been able to double my prices because people are really attracted, the right people are really attracted to that. And so it is much easier to film weddings now because I walk in a room and literally like they'll start clapping or they'll start cheering. Like, John's here. Everybody, this is John. Like, oh my gosh, John. And I'm like, I just film weddings. I'm just like, I don't, like, please stop. I don't like this, but I do like this. But anyway, and so and then like Yas was saying about like she is seeing these films for the first time and or these couples, the video, and like she's capturing like, oh, he stands up straight or he's confident or like, I feel like a lot of me being able to trust that it's like, I am going to give the footage to Yas that I took. I'm trying to shoot in a way that I give her enough to do what she needs to do. And I'll make little notes, but my goal and why I like it so much is that it's like, I don't even have to say anything. It's like, here's the footage, here's the people. I don't want to say anything because I don't want to skew creatively what we've built. So it's just like, take this. I'm so excited to see what you're going to put together with it. And, you know, and it's become this magical back and forth to me where it's just like, it's like Christmas Day every time there's a new film. It's like, oh, what did she do? How do we, you know, and then it's like, okay, I watch it. And then I think through life and like, did that tell the story that I experienced on the day? Did that take it to another level? Wow, I can't believe she was able to connect that thing with those words and that song and this thing. And it's like, we're talking about this and we're seeing all, it's like, wow, I couldn't have done that or whatever. And so that's where John Bunn Films is at now. And it's, to me, so personal. And I don't see a way where I can be just getting booked by planners and have the personal experience I want to have to be able to tell those kinds of stories. And it's attracting people that get it. And I'm totally fine leaving the weddings that a planner's reaching out just for they need just a filmmaker. I don't want to be doing that. There's nothing wrong with it, but I've just gotten okay with being like, I don't have to be everything to everybody. And it's really paid off.
I love that. And again, like, thank you both for just being so transparent and real about this entire process. Again, I think it's if you're just in a community and you're watching films that they get posted, like you never really know the full extent of what's going on to get from point A to point B. And it's, again, we're talking about rebranding and really shifting your market. And there's not just one way to do this. And I think as much as, you know, obviously the work resonates with John and Yas both, and they feel such a connection to these projects now, other filmmakers are starting to see that too. And they see kind of what you guys are carving out in what seemed to be, I don't want to say shallow because it's not shallow, but in the luxury space of being something that has to be flashy, has to be very kind of commercial looking and approach things in a certain way to kind of take a different direction and do something that is more focused back on family and the connection that they have is just really special. So I hope people know that it, you know, or gives them some sense of confidence to kind of forge their own path forward. So if you're rebranding and you do want to go into a luxury market, it's okay to also push for the things that make you happy when you film and the kind of films that you want to make. So I think this was an excellent conversation. I hope people found it useful or helpful as they're going forward. And yeah, thank you both again, just for being so open about discussing this.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. And thank you guys for being on. And for those out there, Wedditor, you know, I've had them exclusively editing for me since 2019 now. So finishing our 4th year, outsourcing, you know, I think even in the last 3 or 4 years has gotten such a better name and people are so much more willing. This is not an ad for how can we get more people to sign up for Wedditor? Although if you want to reach out to them, be sure to do it. Cause I know they fill up quickly, but, more so the idea of like, you don't have to do this on your own. And, you need to lean into what makes you, lean into what makes you click and excited and, find people that you can put around you that help extract the best version of that out of you. And so thank you too for being on. Yes. Thanks for being my best good buddy across the pond, if you will. And I'm just really excited about all the projects we have moving forward. And yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Wow. Thanks, Yas and Sara, for taking the time. It was fun to kind of kind of be on the other side of things with getting interviewed by you all and talking through with you all. Lots of things coming up in me. It's fun to look back. And so I really appreciate you guys taking the time. If you're out there listening and you need outsourcing, be sure to check out Wedditor or check out our outsourcing link over at howtofilmweddings.com/outsourcing. Plenty of great editing companies there. Maybe Wedditor's right for you, maybe somebody else. But our goal with How to Film Weddings is to elevate the wedding film industry. And I know this episode will do that if you'll take what we said today to heart. So be sure to check out that outsourcing link. If you have questions for us, have questions for me, shoot us a message on Instagram at How to Film Weddings. Have an incredible week. And until next time, we'll see you.
You know what can be the worst? Needing to find a lead or a second shooter for your weddings. Have you ever asked for a second in our Facebook group only to find that person isn't available or they're unqualified? If you've ever run into this problem, we've got the solution for you. Second Society. Second Society is an online platform where you can find lead and second videographers and photographers all over the world. List yourself as a shooter or search the database and find the perfect fit for your brand. Let Second Society remove the stress of finding additional videographers and photographers. You can learn more over at howtofilmweddings.com/Second Society. Create your account and use promo code HTFW20 at checkout to save 20% off your annual subscription.